Yes, laser is doing well. In fact, the updates are coming in furiously now because Peppy and Co want to get laser stable before the end of the year, and this week is filled with hot fixes and feedback fixes at the time. So it's gonna be official by the end of the year. Look forward to that. Alright, so let's start off with our warm-up climb to 160. I haven't changed your mod again. Yep, that's kind of what happens when you forget to change the mod on these things. Passing maps have been trivialized to its maximum potential, and using the older HP system in this most modern update doesn't fit. And don't play with the HP. Hey, Eris. 160, huh? I don't know what that means, 160, Eris. Sounds like you're someone who is very interested in passing stuff. Yeah, HP drain now is too weak. As long as you're not playing something way out, you're going to pass them. So the idea is your some sort of feeling of reward or exemplary value system of yourself as an OSU player is somehow dependent on whether it is easier or harder to pass something? Because it does sound like that. If that is the case, then I would like to remind you that a performance-based rating system isn't necessarily based to scale on that. So you can still pass things in your own unique way to find reward in it. I don't think it necessarily requires a psychological dependency on the idea that some sort of depiction of skill must be determined by a system that you don't agree with. It's just my 2 cents. I usually play OS from a psychological standpoint, and if you're trying to equate your subjectivity in your reward system based on passing, right? If that's a reflection of your value system, then critiquing it based on what it isn't is trying to objectify something you subjectively favor, which is non-constructive. However, if you're happy with that, then I respect that opinion. If you're unhappy with it, then I would have to tell you that you have a cognitive dissonance between what is objectively being measured and what is reflective in what you value. If that was a little complicated. I'm suggesting that as long as you feel happy with it, or you feel like you're okay with playing OS based on your criticisms or your feelings about it, then that's fair. I see how someone who may value the skill it requires by imposing higher stringency on an individual-based level. When it comes to a rating system, though, what it's not trying to measure doesn't really require any criticism because it's not intended to do so in the first place. Hopefully you still enjoy OS with all the, changes in HP system and whatnot. I can tell you, I'm excited for those people who have a change in rating system. I don't play for any of those things, and I still really enjoy OS. So you will find that I am actually not playing anything other than this format for the last 19 days. Actually, I usually enjoy doing this most of the time. About the learning process. Yeah. I don't know anything about the HP system at the moment for OS, so personally I can't really provide any exact details or personal experience. Because maps like these, right, they're just non-traditional maps. They're just long strings of streaming maps. And you fail instantly when you miss most of the time. So that's the only experience I have. And usually when I'm doing this, it has no fail mods on everything. So even when I'm practicing and playing ranked maps and stuff, I generally just put on the no fail mod. You love laser still. I personally don't like how easy it was to pass because it didn't feel special anymore. I didn't feel like I accomplished anything. Well, that's unfortunate. However, what you can do, OS Laser, when you're talking about accomplishment, you're talking about affirmation from a system, but you don't necessarily need affirmation from a system if you're saying you personally don't feel it. You can just do a difficulty adjustment and change HP drain to max. I'm sorry, my portrait is blocking it, but you can just adjust everything to HP 10 if you want. So I don't necessarily think you are saying it's personal accomplishments. If it was, you can just adjust the diff to max and then, write it somewhere and say, hey guys, I did this. If you require outside affirmation from a system or other people, you can just adjust the diff to max HP drain and say you did it. They're actually Peppy is integrating a way where it shows it here, so that when you have scores listed or something to your sub, it'll remind you what mods you had, right? And you can always, yeah. Sorry to hear that it's less rewarding, or like the feeling is less special. But generally speaking, you can still feel special. It's just a different, right? A different condition. I can't relate to that, unfortunately. But I can understand how that would feel less rewarding. I'm glad you like Host Laser, by the way. I've played in the upwards of 4,000 hours, maybe something like that. On and off over 5 years, but 4,000 hours, something like that. Well, I wouldn't say half a year because it would give you the false impression of chronology. I would probably use hours of playtime most of the time. What thoughts on laser? It's really nice. I'm a person who doesn't rest on legacy a lot of times when it comes to game clients and games in general. So any change is refreshing, regardless if objectively or subjectively it works or not. So generally speaking, my thoughts are incredibly positive since it's a refreshing change, right? I believe the feature set is incredibly complete. Uh, Largely when a game client or let's say a GUI system, right, a graphic UI is overhauled and the game reaches a maturation state, more feature sets becoming more feature rich is usually my caters to me. So because of the increased feature set in OS Laser compared to OS Stable, it's a win-win for myself. I do love change. So I do like adapting to new things. So regardless if it favors me objectively or not in a skill building way, being challenged to adapt to anything in general is favorable for myself. I don't like maintaining the status quo. A lot of people are not liking the GUI from what I hear, but I think it'll grow on people. Some and some will not, you know. What happens is that if there is an availability of O stable in parallel, then they have a choice. And that's what it really comes down to, in my opinion, when it comes from a feature rich game. The idea that, unlike there are examples like Overwatch, for example, where there's a discontinuation of the prior generation, right? You could also use Counter Strike. That's a little bit more relevant to tangentially relevant to other OS players, where the retirement of the old system limits the option. So when you say psychologically that it'll grow on people, you could a developer can force that to happen psychologically by discontinuing the old one. However, Peppy, I think, has no plans on discontinuing O stable. So regardless, players will settle in on the way they want. If he does discontinue O stable, then naturally speaking, psychologically, if it's the only place to play, it will naturally grow on people. That is a human condition when it comes to being merely exposed to a closed ecosystem. So it's kind of like, well, you don't like the new iPhone, but since it's a closed ecosystem, you'll get used to exposure to a new iPhone, and eventually you'll update your iPhone, that kind of thing. So GUI system adjusting, that's typically change adjustments. And OS is predicated on enriching for people who have strong legacy preferences. So historicals, like for example, the HP change made you feel different. And generally it comes from a place of change that's often viewed as it's not the same anymore. Like the phrasing you have is it doesn't feel special anymore. So you're seeking you have to enter the process of looking to make it special again, right? And then that was when we talked about the mods, changing the HP grain, adding new, the feature richness of the option. I would say that's a classical representation of a vast majority of mechanical players, of which OS pre-selects for psychologically. For myself, uh, regardless of what the change is, adapting to it and using the learning process, adapting to it is my favorite part. So if OS laser changes to OS, I don't know, rainbow in 2 years, I'm all for it. Because if you're looking for my thoughts on it, any change is what I specialize in. My specialization in what I do is about adapting and the learning process. So when there's a change, it means I'm not doing the same thing anymore. And when I'm not doing the same thing anymore, that's what I practice most of the time. I practice on adjusting to new things, not mastery of new things. So, or not mastery of the same things. So if the GUI system is different, then it's different. And I love to talk about how it's different and how that impacts other people. So it is a great big, in terms of the way the GUI works, it's a big departure from OS stable. So naturally, if you understand how human psychology works with being complacent in one place, like if you get used to it, like the OS stable client has been around for more than a decade, right? 2007. I think largely the UI hasn't substantially changed in its structure and functionality since 2007. Um, Complacency sits. So it's very psychologically easier to point out the differences when the departure is incredibly extreme. So naturally, that's a very pragmatic way to explain, yeah, a lot of people, I would even argue the vast majority of people, will require time to separate themselves from something they have been used to seeing for a really long time. Sentimentalism, nostalgia, and legacy is one of the most powerful psychological satisfaction of people in general. So, like, when there's a long history, it takes a while to adjust. And the GUI changes, I can tell you if you take the subjectivity out, so say a new person enters OS, right? And they are exposed to client designs, modernized client designs, browser designs, the internet. Pepe's design reflects and upholds a lot of the modernizations that happen that is independent of legacy. So sometimes legacy can mar what it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of deal, right? So that's great. That comes with a lot of emotional positivity or reliance and trust. If I'm not a guy who only plays OS most of the time, so I like to pay attention to GUI designs and modernization, like especially in indie games. Indie games tend to focus a lot on trying to modernize and kind of touch up the UI stuff, test different ideas. And this UI system is in line with a lot of modernizations. So outside of the rose-colored goggles that most people will have because they have played OS for a really long time or been used to something, pragmatically speaking, so objectively, how displays are done, where the buttons are, how accessible they are, how many, like, the efficiency of clicks and organization. Generally speaking, I think this is on the upper ends, like above average in UI design for the modern age of gaming. So when it comes to this, I think Laser, I think Pepe really understands, and his company, right? The people who work with him, company as in friends and coworkers. They have taken a lot of thought into designing a GUI system that meets modern standards and modern practices. So it's above average, pragmatically speaking. Subjectively speaking, I can totally understand that the vast majority of established players are going to have a time of readjustment. I don't know if you wanted to hear that, but this is kind of, I don't really play OS for performance or throwing out plays. I play video games and learn do product reviews and whatnot, and typically this is how it goes. So those are my thoughts on the GUI. Absolutely, I agree with you. The vast majority of established players will find the GUI not an adjustment period, and that adjustment period is growing to like a client. When it comes to introducing someone to OS, this is far more modernized, pragmatically designed than the previous OS stable. So if I had to recommend OS or encourage someone to use a client, OS Laser wins by landslide because of the modernization. It's no longer 2007. Pepe's design and experience and colleagues have matured quite vastly in their ability to create a GUI that is incredibly deep and feature rich while trying to make it approachable. OS Stable is not that. It's very rudimentary. It is probably more efficient, I would say. Probably more efficient because it is less feature rich. Now they have to work a GUI system that juggles an incredible amount of depth while still allowing a new player to pop in and understand, sit down, grab and play, and still continue to explore the depth of the client as they see fit. Which I think, in my opinion, Pepe and Co. has done a wonderful job of that. One thing I'm a little bit worried about when it comes to feedback, and this happens a lot to well-established games. I play quite a lot of live service games over the years that goes to the upwards of 10 years of tenure. So like following a game for 10 years. One of the difficulties of expanding OS as a product, right? As a designer, if they're wanting to reach to a larger audience, it's that oftentimes you do rely on feedback from legacy players. So when you rely on feedback from legacy players, if you predominantly do that, you will inherently start designing your client and your game in favor of feedback of established players. And that typically ends up becoming gatekeeping. Not like maliciously or intentionally. Understanding how humans give feedback. If you're completely reliant on community feedback from legacy players, it will generally gatekeep against new ones. And I'm not suggesting Pepe did that. I actually suggesting Pepe didn't do that. Pepe took a lot of the feedback, right? Constantly talked to his established community, but at the same time, you can see some of the changes if the established community goes into a new client and some things are off-putting, like, oh yeah, this is kind of a change. This is kind of weird. It's like, I'll get used to it. So he still provides a lot of feedback, like takes in the feedback and adjusts those things. But at the same time, he is also imbuing his own identity to modern standards that are outside the established community. So it's a blend. So it doesn't alienate all of the established players, right? It gave them just enough change that they're like, I don't really like this, but I'll learn to love it. Or I'll learn over time to adjust to it. And he has included enough of the same feeling, like the core stuff, which Pepe in interviews highlight all the time. It's like, hey, the core gameplay, we got to keep that tight, right? He knows how to prioritize. Him and his developers, right, know how to prioritize what must be very similar to keep the veterans going, and it introduced a lot of their own changes that they see outside of the game to attract new players. So it's awesome. I think Peppy and Co deserve some sort of like developer like love labor of love award, which of course doesn't happen because it's on a Steam platform, right? Like if this was end up on Steam, for sure, I would say a great contender for labor of love, because this is a wonderful hybrid. If and live service games do kind of, this is technically under the umbrella of live service, only the funding is a little different, right? I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I hope so, because I think to me, Os Laser represents uh Pepe's original idea to make it more approachable and to a larger audience in his own way. So a lot of it features the feedback of the established community, while at the same time he's made a bunch of executive decisions, developmental decisions, top down, to include being approachable from a bigger audience. So like, because of the end of year, OS Laser is gonna be launched, and OS Steam, right? OS Stream, sorry, OS Stream, which is the current project that's working on the mobile side of things. It's a little rough start. Obviously, they need to gain experience on the mobile front. So if you look at like some of the earlier takes and stuff, it's kind of working against the gatekeeping that's happening with OS desktop players. So there's still a little bit of friction there. But this, I believe, in my opinion, is very reasonable to go on Steam, right? If I had to now recommend, as someone who don't really play OS that long, I'm not really an OS streamer, content creator, but as someone who reviews products, design philosophies, and psychology, and mostly focused on teaching and learning, this is far more recommendable and approachable than O Stable. O Stable has a like less of a neutral. It's great, charming for, you know, all the established people from way back, like at least 4 or 5 years, like myself, right? Or longer, even 10 years plus. Um, this is neutral enough, professional enough in a way that really speaks to a larger audience. So now the UI has, it's not just function, right? The old school stuff is all about function. Uh how, like, if it looks too fancy, it can be overwhelming to people who are in the nitty-gritty. So I would say a perspective of the established OS community is how functional it is, because it's about the performance. It's no longer about the bells and whistles. When you try to recommend a game like OS to someone, it's largely first about the bells and whistles, because they have not established their routine yet, and their like what they like about it, their refinement process. So making that all approachable, because OS is incredibly deep in how customizable its experience is, this is far more recommendable. I used to teach. Right now, my focus is typically about learning. So the idea is to evaluate most things based on how they get people to learn things or adjust things. It's largely about problem solving. Uh, Before this, you know, before COVID and all, I used to work in science, and my goal at the time was to go stay in academia as a professor of science. Generally speaking, that didn't happen. I don't know if I'll return to it, But nowadays, I've been doing lots of hobby stuff, just hobby stuff, but at the same time, applying the same methods of learning and talking about it, right? And now, right now, I'm warming up. But this is all I'm gonna do the entire day. Yeah, just a little, nod to Peppy and stuff, because it's an exciting time. It's a great time to be an established OS fan, as well as it's an exciting time to see what new types of communities, sub-communities are going to be born out of OS Laser. Like, what I mean by that is, when you have specializations and subcultures, it within a community is often how feature-rich the game is. And this game, OS Laser, and OS Stable really, it's harder to see it. This means that there is incredible combination of subcultures waiting to happen in the OS community. Like, in the traditional sense, we already had your DT peeps, your jump peeps, your TV size peeps, your streamer, your long stream stamina guys, your consistent. This is going to break open even further. And that is why I feel very confident that it is a great time to be an OS fan. And at the same time, it can be very scary and daunting when something you love as a legacy player will have more and more people who play OS differently. With that said, I am already a unicorn in this because I don't resonate with the current OS community. I don't play OS in any aspect of what the vast majority, but maybe in the future it'll be different. Like, I might find people who just like to tap back and forth, right? We don't know. Can't know until OS becomes wider and more spread, but look at this. Look at this fun category. Like, you gotta hats off to Peppy and Co. They had fun. Like, this stuff, you'll probably see me do some of these stuff in the future. Because I'm not a performance-based person. I just like learning. My mastery skills is something that's independent of the skill itself, right? I would say the only thing I can humbly say about myself is that I learn very quickly. I learn a lot of things, and I just continue to do that. That's the skill that I practice. Not a mastery of this stuff, like repeating and doing that stuff. So passing, it allows me to empathize with, hey, you like passing maps? That's great. I tried it a little bit. Probably not to the extent of emotional attachment like you have, but I can appreciate what you're trying to do. And then, people who like FCs, like, I tried it a little bit. I can't understand your drive, like feel the same drive as you for being a 99.91% ACT player, but I have tried it, so I can connect with you a little bit. At least made the attempt to connect with you, as opposed to someone who can't connect with another person. Like, for example, a person who prides on consistent ACT has trouble empathizing for a person who only passed maps, right? A person who is an HR main will have a larger gap in understanding HD mains, for example. And my goal is, I just do a little of everything. It's the idea of learning a new skill, not the idea of mastering the skill. Oh, the spin mod? Yeah, I saw, I watched people use a lot of these things. It'll be a little bit before I get to some. I think one thing I probably would do first is probably the muted mod. The muted mod is something that I have to it's a psychological interest. So I've talked about how music and rhythm means to a musician versus to a person who plays os. And there's a reason why those don't correlate with each other. And this muted mod would illustrate the point, to me anyways, how I'm more of a musician than I am a rhythm mechanics player. So there's a lot of fun things to explore, and I will probably do a spin on a lot of these mods in a learning manner, like a psychological learning manner, and explore what I learn about my sub as a way to encourage others to explore what they learn about themselves when they explore different things. Generally speaking though, it will be a while because like most things, I tend to do a lot of different things, and that's generally the general theme. So like it's been 7 months since 19 days ago that I played OS. So it can take a while. I don't usually sit on a specific skill anymore, because the skill that I sit on requires that I keep doing new things. Yep. And we're gonna keep going. I need to still warm up. A little bit cold, but that's okay. Hey, Worm. Sorry about... No. I'm sorry if it sounded like I don't want to be distracted. I hope I don't give you that impression. Uh, Typically, I do this for the very idea of being distracted. Actually, I would say the content that I really want to make is often emphasizing being distracted. So, hopefully I don't give you the impression. I know you enjoy conversation. Oh, okay, fair enough. And I shouldn't feel too bad, but I still feel. Yeah. Definitely. Sorry, I didn't even read the rest of your comment first before talking about it. I like to weigh as they go, but yeah, definitely. Uh, it's still worth mentioning. Like I appreciate that you understand that, and I still appreciate that you feel somewhat guilty, like you can't help it, right? And that's a very great it's an endearing quality because you're having the other person's feelings in mind. So that's still worth mentioning, right? Even though I tell you not to feel bad and you do feel bad, I still appreciate it. Because if you feel bad, it means you're a very considerate person. right? What's up, Worm? Hello. Hello. It's always worth communicating how much you appreciate someone else's time, as opposed to always favoring your own time. Being off work right now, but take care. All right. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the conversation. Good luck with your commute back home. Also, good luck with your OS journey. Hey, you never know. Maybe there's gonna be a fun community, a bigger community of past players who like that massive HP drain, right? The world's gonna be more exciting soon. 2024 is gonna be a big year for OS. You might actually find a streamer who legitimately make it introduce new ways to enjoy like passing maps. It's gonna be great. And take care. Thanks for the conversation again. You know? Alright. Let's go. Refocus. Alright. I do like that I get to play a different song every time. There's still 2 or 3 stutters in there, here and there. You tried laser today, Worm. Did anything stick out to you? What is the... Give me 2 or 3 impressions that stuck with you from your time with laser today. We were just talking about that. So as you were hopping in, Speedrun, Sin, and I were discussing a lot of the OS laser stuff, and because the change is coming up soon, right? By the end of the year, right? So it's a really encouraging time to try OS laser since it's reaching a stable release soon. Like the unofficial or official stable release, not to be confused with like OS Laser's soft launch some 7 years ago. Not sure why they wouldn't let you choose where it installs the first launch, so you have to manually move it to know. Oh, okay. That might be something. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if there is an option for that. OS Laser installed in the place that I wanted it to by default, so I haven't actually looked if there is a feature for that. There is. Oh, cool. Oh, or no. Okay, so or no, there's an option for that inside the game. Oh, that's kind of neat. I tell you now, Worm, so far, like, you know, other people that I know are starting to move to OS Laser, and every time they come up with a question, and then we look at it, turns out the options in the game. Like, I talk about this a few times, right? I don't have I typically am a person who take everything default and then just adjust to it, right? However, obviously, OS community is very different, right? And Sun and I talk back and forth a lot of times, and he say things like, why does the background need to be blurred? So we like look through the options, and one of the options recently that people are really used to in OS Laser, which again I adjust most of the time, was the idea that you have to hold down a button, like to escape, like to bring up the menu, you have to hold down a button. And after perusing through the options a bunch of times again, turns out there's an option for it. And to, you know, Sun's desires and preferences, where was it? It's really feature rich, so it's kind of, they're trying their best to organize all this stuff, but there's so many options. Like, if you were to go into a video game, you wouldn't have, you know, the first thing you would think about is spending like 6 hours going through the options first before actually playing. So they have to juggle all of this, right? And it was, see, I can't even find it right away. It was, so this is something that OS, people who played OS stable most of the time would want to know, right, where it is. And here it is. It's on user interface, and it's hold to confirm activation time. It's set to 200 milliseconds, I think. It's either 100 milliseconds or 200 milliseconds by default. So that's how long you have to hold down the button before it activates. So like escaping or going to the retry menu, right, during gameplay requires a hold down, or any menu, like backing out of anything. So you can put it to instantaneous, which I did, even though I was fine with the 200 milliseconds, but now it's here. So just something that I feel it is an option that most established OS players are probably far more used to. And it's here. It's a slider. It's a slider. The only thing I'm still skeptical about are sliders from old replays still not behaving as intended while having mode force on them and song selects not being skinnable. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Uh, that, so the only thing I can tell you about that is when it comes to a design, like a skin design, if you look at the skin editor, right, there's already a modular slot for song selection and gameplay, right? So that means it's not being skinnable at the moment, right? So, and the priority is right now to get what a vast majority of people care about at the moment, which is to get the ranking system, that scoring algorithm, up to a form that they are satisfied with. And however, it just means you have to look forward to it. It's coming. You can see that the UI design has already, the layout editor has already considered that. Although I haven't used multi yet, I heard it was pretty unstable before. I have heard that too. But there are new features. There are there was a recent update. There are a lot of features that aren't part of OS stable that has been a consternation for a while, and it just got added recently. So yes, it might still need some work, perhaps, but there are a lot of things that are long-time features that were missing out of convenience in OS stable that's now in OS laser. So you get compromises, right? One thing that was recent for this one is song selection is really fast, much faster. And unfortunately, I don't have a large library and I don't search songs very often, so I can't really tell you if it was fast or slow, because I organize all my stuff most of the time so that it's always a subset of something. Apparently it's faster. I don't know how comparable it is to OS stable, but yeah, that's something too. So to make it more of a positive spin, the idea is at least it's going to be available at some time. That's kind of something to look forward to. I mean, if you love a game and you have something to look forward to, that's all the best, right? I understand that it kinda a lot of times when it comes to live service games, or when it comes to video games in general, we are still in that mindset, including myself, in that mindset initially of, hey, does this game look like it's ready for launch? And I totally understand where most people come from. For me, I've long since kind of left that behind. It's no longer a place where I'm like, oh yeah, this leaves me, yeah, you would think they launch with this. Nowadays, since OS is technically a live service model, right? Rolling updates, completely voluntarily money spent, and the way they try to encourage purchasing is different for Peppy, for sure. Peppy and Co. However, this is a live service game, so the idea is, the mentality is, it launches with the core stuff, and all the other things that aren't core, you have to understand that they will likely come. But generally speaking, the launch criteria for most live service updates are not based on a complete product, but based on functionality enough to maintain the complete product, or the ongoing product. Because live service games or live service things aren't ever complete. And having the mentality that it is complete is gonna create a lot of friction between the person consuming the game and not. And that may help you or may not help you. For me, and possibly a lot of people I'm referring to, having a slight switch in mindset on that can make one love the thing they love even more, right? It's the compromise between the passion that you have for a game. Like one slight deep cut would be a sequel to a game that you love. Like, this is the OG game, you absolutely love it, and since you're going into the next thing isn't exactly a live service example, it's the idea of being upset when the next game has to be all the original game and more. It can hurt you emotionally, or it can't. Or like, it can be very devastating and disappointing, or maybe not. So it's really up to the person a lot of times. So for example, when I see a sequel, I don't look for a continuation of, for myself personally, I don't look for continuation of the original, everything the original have, into the sequel. With that said, I typically do not review products in that way, because I understand that the vast majority of people expect that anything feature rich is carried on launch to a updated version of that game or a sequel to that game. And this applies to live service games that iterate on a release, and this applies to going to OS Laser. OS Laser has to retain all of its feature sets from a previous game. And if you have that mentality, it can often mar what is an objectively completed product. Because for me, it is. Also, just remember the hit circles on new Argon Lane looks really weird and hidden. It makes it pretty uncomfortable to read. Oh yeah, that's more of a nitpicking. I would say that's more of a nitpicky thing, in a sense that it does matter to you a lot, because nitpicky things matter to someone who has played something a really long time. So it's perfectly acceptable that you feel it's a big deal. I wouldn't even say it's not a big deal, because the longer you play something, the bigger deal it comes, and it's okay. I actually understand that it isn't nitpicking, in my opinion. If you're someone who played something for a really long time, it is very difficult to overcome the initial feelings of change. That's kind of the center pin of what that speedrun guy and I were discussing, right? It's super understandable that you're gonna have those feelings, and I don't think you should try to rationalize it being, maybe it's not a big deal. It is kind of a big deal. At the same time, a lot of the other stuff, like having skinnable song selects and stuff, we have to think about it as, I would love to be able to skin my song select. Do I love the new design? I actually do too. I would recommend this design. This design is done really well, in a sense. Earlier on, before you arrived, I was talking about how it behaves to the modern standards. So like, if you're comparing song selects, how like text and sorting and GUI layouts work compared to the modern standards of other games at the time. So someone that hasn't ever played OS before, this is functionally above average. Like, it's maybe even higher than that. So when you think about, is skinnable song select something that should impact if OS Laser is ready to launch, it's most definitely not ready to launch for any person who's established to a feature that doesn't exist in OS Laser yet, right? It's a feature that you had in OS Stable. So that goes back to the whole idea of, it sucks to lose a feature. It's uncomfortable to lose a feature, really. It's generally negative. I talk about it a lot when I was playing the Like a Dragon series, right? One of the things about keeping your community consistent is that feature sets do not drop out with any other sequel. What the end user could do to feel more comfortable, right? To stay loving the thing you love is to remember that sometimes feature sets either eventually end up on the platform, but when it comes to launching and prioritizing how to reach a larger audience, the vast majority of the things you like aren't necessary at the time of the launch. So it might not be constructive at times to say that is necessary for launch. It doesn't stop you from being entitled to, rate a game or be disappointed about certain things. It's a really big thing now. It's a huge thing in the gaming industry that they have to contend with. The idea that they want to finish a game and launch a game in 7 years or so, yet so many features are not included from the previous game because the previous game had like 10 years of development on top of everything else they have to make that's new. If you hear, most likely it's not a big deal at all because I can just change them and it would mostly the ending maps with a lot of stack patterns. There's something about how it fades out almost unevenly. That's interesting. I don't know enough about him to comment on that. Making a mess of a stack pattern. I see how it would affect it if it was fading unevenly. Same combo colors and fast enough. So by the time you play maps fast enough for this to matter, you figure out what type of skin is more. That's fair. There you go. And they did prioritize that. They prioritized the ability to at least skin the gameplay, right? Because that's essential that's like the bottom line essential thing for established OS community players, right? OS Laser, though, now is entering a different tenure. OS Laser is designed to expand its approachability. So often, skinning something is usually the last thing a lot of times. The last as far as most people go when it comes to investing into something. So, it's still there, skinning the gameplay thing. In fact, what you said was exactly what Sun compromised on, or other established OS players compromise on. It's like, well, at least the gameplay can be augmented for whatever problems it may or may not have, right? So that's what they did. In terms of song selection, I actually think if I had to skin something, this would be difficult for me to replicate. Like, for me, I am impressed that they were able to do, which is what we talked about earlier with the other guy. I am impressed. Understanding how I would try to organize this stuff and finding functionalities, like how to group them and whatnot. It's nice. It's well done. Obviously, I'm not aware of 2/3 of these things because I don't use that functionality yet, right? Yet. But organizing all this stuff is fantastic. The one thing I'd say is I still think personal presets should be on by default between two things. In fact, there is the sort also holds between sessions. So I don't have to like resort every time I come on. However, a personal little detail in my opinion for like new players and possibly older players is the idea that when you have presets, when you think about personal presets, having them carry over and only change when you manually toggle it is usually the more intuitive line of thinking. So every time, like right now I'm only just nitpicking because I've done this 19 days in a row already. I have failed to remember to do this 14 out of 19 times, I think. I think only 5 times so far that I actually remembered. I go through, play the first song, and I realize, oh, I forgot this, right? However, this is fantastic. There's also like, you can search anything. So, the thing they designed incredibly well, I think, is worth a highlight. And Peppy actually highlighted it himself. It's just looking at his face, I think he's particularly proud of it. Like the people, him and his colleagues, is that every single thing is keyboard searchable. Like everything, like all the menus, all like so many things have keyboard accessibility. Like what I mean is just like quick key matching, like word key phrase matching, all your options. Like it's incredible. It's everywhere, and that's just more accessibility than anyone asked for. Generally speaking, when you think about like song selections and stuff, you think of pragmatism, right? You go minimalistic style, as in what's the fastest way to get to the thing you want and only you want to do. And they have to capture that feeling while also making sure that, hey guys, there's all this stuff, you should try all this stuff too. A lot when you become a seasoned player, you start to not explore these things anymore. You start to get into your own routines, your own habits, and it's going to, it's going to hinder a new launch of a game if the feedback is from experienced players. And what I just said earlier was that hats off to Peppy and company, where they managed to take ideas and cues from outside of the game that isn't solely dependent on their established community, and also take enough community feedback, established community feedback, to make it feel as close enough to the OG experience that they're used to, but at the same time also kind of tease features and stuff that new players will see immediately when they begin to explore. So it has to be approachable and readable and self-explanatory. And this is a lot. Like, if we have to think about a rhythm game that represents its pedigree and history, just looking at this is incredibly daunting. But it's not incredibly daunting to just play. And that is largely, I don't know, like, this isn't a jab at OS Stable per se, because OS Stable is a product of 2007, but Peppy and Co clearly have matured in their design, and it just shows. Like, if I had to recommend a rhythm game now, OS wouldn't be on near the bottom, because to me, OS Stable is a niche product. It was a product that is very difficult to recommend to someone who hasn't played a rhythm game. Even then, there were so many requirements for someone to start now to playing OS, and now I can highly recommend it. And then once the rank stuff comes in and stuff, it's like, if you don't know anything, say like, oh, I don't know what mods are there, but hey, the UI is designed in a way that someone who's exploring, you can guide them, like point them in the correct direction if they do get lost, because it is overwhelming, which is a good thing in the long run, but kind of a bad thing in the short term, where if it's too overly complicated and overwhelming, it will stop the player from playing, right? Or even exploring. So in this way, they have managed, in my opinion, to make OS far more approachable visually. And yes, I understand that you kind of want your own songs like the one that you're used to and whatnot. Did I change anything? I kind of changed a little bit of the song selection in OS stable. I mean, I added like my own artwork and whatnot to like here and there, which I kind of still want to do, perhaps. At the same time, this is incredibly functional. Like, I played a lot of indie rhythm games prior to the time I recorded like stuff for Twitch, and man, there are some rough ones. I think this is way above average, and it's to the point where it would be very difficult for me to end up coming up with this layout to include all the functionality, and most of the functionality I don't use. Like in OS stable, I actually skinned over mods and options and stuff that I don't use, and that comes with, you know, experience. There are things like how to make this layout with just these two columns or something, or how do you remove. So what they did was they created presets, and then presets can have any combination of the stuff, and then you create your own menu right on the left, and your own menu on the left will make it so that all of these aren't required anymore, and it's always set to the left. The first thing you see is to the left. So it combines someone who's not familiar with OS and someone who's very familiar with OS. And I would probably say in the future, you can probably just have an option to remove all of this stuff and just have your presets shown in the middle. Probably. That would be a GOAT move. Just the idea that so many modular things happened on this GUI, the sky's the limit in terms of how customizable it is. And it's for the future, I suppose. They're not all in there at the moment, obviously. Yeah, old design was really confusing for new players for sure. It took effort to get or someone else to teach you. Now it's still somewhat bloated. Well, it's always gonna be bloated, right? Because you can't possibly unbloat it anymore. So the thing that you mentioned that I was referring to about feature rich, carrying over features, it will always be bloated from now on because its community is dependent on legacy. You can't strip away features anymore. If you don't want bloatedness, right? If you think bloatedness is a negative, then you also have to rationalize not being able to skin song selection, not being able to skin gameplay. They're all part of the bloat. Because functionally, if you're focused on being straightforward, all the stuff that you're saying that you want or think it needs is part of the bloat. It's the opposite of what Google does. It's the opposite of minimal streamlining. So it's always emotionally better to be bloated. It's always intellectually better for it not to be bloated. So that's kind of like the objectivity fighting with subjectivity. So as a legacy player, you always want your game to be bloated because the designer wants to include everything. If you keep telling them to streamline it, then you're going to encounter the emotional sacrifice for being intellectually streamlined. And if it doesn't fit, right? Streamline is a one-size-fits-all type of technique. You're working on efficiency, functionality, and stripped of any bells and whistles. That is being not bloated. Well, bells and whistles include not being able to skin song selection, if you know what I mean. So if you're okay with that, just an idea. So when you're thinking about the things you love being bloated, generally speaking, the things you love being bloated is a symptom of people loving the thing. And they have to do that all the time. So they're streamlining, actually. Not being able to skin song selection means it's less bloated, because people don't have to worry about skinning song selection. All these mods and fun, they can all be stripped, because it's actually not efficient. It's not streamlined. So like Hittin', Hard Rock, DT, they're all bloated. They're all extra features on top of the core gameplay. So when you start talking about that, I like to believe that in order to feel happier about the products that you like or love moving forward, typically bloated on paper, pragmatically speaking, is the consequence of love and passion. The last thing you want is a streamline of the thing you want. And that's what mainstream designers thought their community wants. So oftentimes a sequel ends up getting negative reviews and criticisms because the thing that passionate people want is not the thing that they ended up wanting. Like, if you want a less bloated OS experience, you have to be willing to give up all the feature sets, most of the feature sets that you cared about, because the thing that makes you a long-time lover of the game are all those things. So how does this translate? Payday 2. Payday 2, Warhammer 40k Dark Tides, any sequel you can think of where they decided we're going in a different direction and it's streamlined. And then the first thing the community is going to say is like, dude, where the heck is my bloat? The phrasing is not, they wouldn't use the word bloat. They would use the word, where are my features, dude? Like, this doesn't have third mod support? Like, what the heck? You can't even change the FPS? Like, where's my FOV slider? That's all bloat. Like, it's all bloat. If you're uninitiated, you're fine with whatever they give you, because you have no standards. No standards of the game. Sometimes people bring in other standards from other games, and that's how you kind of do the thing where I do, where, well, if I look at the modern standards of GUI design for rhythm games right now, like Just Dance, I don't know, Stepmania, things like that, this is incredible. It's incredibly bloated with features, and it's fantastic because they manage to constantly feel organized while adding the most features they can possibly add. And it will always be daunting, and you're always having a battle between, should we streamline this and cut this, or do we add this and it becomes more bloated? And that's my 2 cents about feeling if it's better or not to have more features or not. So for me, if I love a game, all I can think about is it's gonna be unapproachable. Usually what I want in it is gonna make it more bloated, and it's going to make it harder for a new person to play because they aren't me. If I'm a new player, I want it to be streamlined because I have no idea what's going on, so strip all the extra stuff. And the designer, the developer, has to balance these two. It has to be bloated enough to keep the old players satisfied, and streamlined enough to get new players in. I actually think, here's a GOAT, right? Here's a meta. I think in the future of maybe Pepe's design and other design, there will be 2 different layouts of OS. the Pro layout and the standard layout. And what it will do is it will take all the streamlined preferences, like things that veteran players like to have but not have. That would be it. I think the future is kind of like, I'm stealing this idea by the way, Worm. You know, you use something every single day that actually already uses this type of tier system. Your OS. Your OS generally comes with 3 different versions of the OS. In fact, if you're like an SDK person, probably 4. So in my future predictions, right? If I had to make a prediction about UI design and feature sets, I see a future where, and it's a little scary because I can think of ways you can exploit this too monetarily, because when Microsoft does it all the time and Apple does it all the time. If I choose a simpler example, it would be OBS. Yes, exactly. So in the future, here's a scary thing and a great thing. The great thing is games will come with an initial preset, 3 presets. 1 for a returning player, 1, so all the feature sets that deal with getting a person to reacclimate to returning to a game, a newcomer, and a seasoned pro that plays habitually, right? Immediately when you launch in, you decide which one's your defaults, and you click on it, and it would be 3 different versions of the same GUI, only they were catered to the average pro player, the average first timer, and the average returning player. Okay? All in the same game. Now, if history is any indicator, usually this gets a little sketch, because depending on the publisher's need for money, I could also see a future where games will have 3 different versions on purchase, and you're gonna have like a newcomer copy. You see what I mean? So there's a lot of gray areas that it's great ideally if it doesn't cost the developer and the publisher substantially more money to redo their GUI system 3 times over, or sell them separately to offset the cost and time of development. For me, I think Peppy might do this. Peppy will definitely do this because his monetizing model and stuff would support it. But executively, yes, that would, and it already does. Worm, it already does. It's already normalized, but not in gaming. It's not a gaming industry standard. It is a tech standard. It is most definitely a software standard. Microsoft, Apple, Google, they do tier systems and different versions of their same software. And those softwares are like triple dipping, in my opinion, like earnestly triple dipping. However, it also costs a lot to triple over anything, because when you make a change, right? Think about it this way, everything is exponential. If you make the 3 different versions, all your bug fixes, all your updates have to be 3 times over. So even though it is actually triple dipping, I am not an exec or a publisher or someone who handles finances at that scale to understand, does it actually cost that much? I can make a reasonable reaction that it probably does cost that much. Like, you need 3 different teams, right, of people that need to know the slight differences between the 3 versions in order to upkeep them. However, I believe in developers to finding a modular way of doing this that allows you to make 3 different versions without having to change fundamentally all 3 of them. So in my opinion, I think Peppy's probably already on this, where he's making, like, him and his team is making all of these things like separate modules. Like, they're designing ground up OS Laser to be modular in a nature where you can just slot these things out. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future in options, like when you go to options, right, it's gonna say, like, up here, what type of OS Laser preset do you want? Are you an experienced player? And then you start there, right? It'll be one toggle, and immediately you can have someone who doesn't know anything about the game have an experience. Then they'll decide, you know what, I'm ready. Let's take all that training wheels off and then go to a different version of it. And it'll be like a skin. It'll feel like a skin, per se. However, it includes all the other functionality, not just in appearance. And that's kind of where I see OS Laser going. And I kind of see the gaming industry going in that direction. How it's going to be monetized, it leaves a lot of room to be desired, because there's already a precedent set for software sales. And when you sell software, it's usually far more lucrative, and it offsets whatever costs and increased manpower you need to keep up 3 different versions. The closest thing in the gaming industry that comes with the version sales is editions. And it's already largely fairly negative, right? The Ultimate Edition, the Premier Early Release Pack Edition, the Standard Base Edition. Now you even have like possibly like a stripped down version. It's gonna be tough, but it is moving in that direction. That's kind of one of my things that I've been thinking about for a while, because it's on the uptrend. The idea of tiering the purchase thing towards the person that they're looking for. It's everywhere. I'm not saying gaming industry. It's an uptick on gaming industry, but it's everywhere before the gaming industry. When you go, I'm not sure about your country, Worm. However, in the United States, like when you buy a car, it originally a car is just one thing. And now it's 4 tiers, at least 4 tiers. And then now they remove the tiers. Well, they still have the tiers, but what even more attractive is fully customizable. Is like the Wave, right? Because it caters to the whole internet way of doing things. In order for fully customizable to be possible, they had to create an infrastructure that's modular, so that you can swap parts and swap manufacturing on the fly without excess manpower being wasted. For example, you don't just make all 20 versions of your car before it's ordered, right? Like, expecting people are going to have a natural distribution, but that's how cars were made before. The most popular model gets made the most, and then it tiers off and distributes based on its prior sales. In video games, that's kind of what is happening now. That's why there are Ultimate Editions, and the reason why now, like, one of the big reasons why now? Why do gaming start doing tier systems even more now? It's because physical media is dying. So there aren't any more physical media, right? Like, if you're wanting to think like, oh yeah, but I still collect physical media. It's like, yes, it's a hobby now though. Like, it's not the social norm anymore. For better or for worse, I understand lots of people love collecting. And collecting is a hobby originally. And now it's literally, both figuratively and literally, a hobby. Because these things are subsiding. Why is that important? Because digitalizing the games and the stuff we own makes it possible to cut down cost of printing those things, expecting they're gonna sell. Now, digitization of goods is that we make as many to order. Just like if you were to make a car, how many cars do you make of all your different types of cars? You can't guarantee that they're going to sell all of them. So you can lose all of that investment. I have no idea. Only thing I know is that a lot of businesses that deal with expensive tech is secondhand, so I doubt it's standardized. But oh, okay, that's fair. I don't know enough about like the manufacturing and how like retail and commercialization to a commoner, like to a civilian, is like in a different country. For me, I'm just applying as much as I can understand from a production standline from the United States. A lot of times when it comes to making products or even offering services, it becomes exponentially difficult if you have to make the product first, expecting a return on investment, versus any way to make it to order, offer to order. Generally speaking, that's where I come in, because most of my life I offered a service. I don't offer a product, right? So, and even on the service front, you have to know how to expand, right? And when you know how to expand, you enter the problems that usually face product sales. You have to expand in a way that you can guarantee you meet those requirements. Like, for example, as a service person, how can I expand if I wanted to be a content creator that deals with having these discussions all the time? How do I expand that to give people the impression that I can guarantee consistent quality of my service that I offer? Well, it's nearly impossible for myself alone. So what do I have to do? I have to hire more people. What does that sound like? It sounds like a company. And how will I manage the quality? Well, I have to train every one of those people, or those people have to become trained or came trained like me in order to represent a consistent brand. And that exponentially gets worse. And if you're thinking about it that way, now think about the product that you're offering, right? Or a game that you're developing. You have to do all those negotiations at the same time. And then after all of that, you have to hope that you read your target audience, your target consumer properly. And that just, it's a euphemism, but sometimes I know it's hard to believe that CEOs get paid a lot of money, right? But at the same time, when I start to try to step in the shoes of one of them, my head starts spinning in a way that I wouldn't be fine taking $5 million to do a job like that. I don't think it's sustainable for me, right? Because I can't possibly imagine myself expanding so wildly big, just like the way this is. Like, this is a big deal. I don't know what other OS players think, because if I had to guess, most established OS players will start throwing around phrases like, okay, at least they included all the things I wanted. Like, this stuff, not really interested. I'm set in my own ways, right? Like, I'm indifferent. Not hating, just indifferent. Just like, maybe I'll never touch it. That kind of thing. And from a developer standpoint, at least in my opinion, from a developer standpoint, and a publisher, self-published, right? Peppy is self-published. My thoughts is he is probably spending way more time, in my opinion, thinking about how to expand, not how to contract. So what does this design tell me? Peppy is ready for the next step. OS is ready for the next step. It is ready to triple or quadruple its fan base. And to me, that's super exciting. There's a bias here because I don't resonate with the current OS community at all. Like, it's so hard. Every day I sit down and I think about how can I streamline, right? How can I streamline and explain any OS player who stops by in the stream very quickly on what I'm doing? Because I have to streamline to an OS player what it's like to not to play OS like I do, because they are so refined in what they do. It would be very difficult to feel the same way. So I have to communicate first what it's like, and that is an indicator of what type of resonance I have with the community. I spend 90% of my time when I'm not streaming OS, and I'm planning on streaming OS, to come up with better and better streamlined, as in not bloated, explanation as to what I'm doing. And that's kind of a fun double take on how you could be very experienced at OS, but other people will streamline it to explain it to you. Because when you're new to a concept, you generally favor being streamlined. When you're really, really seasoned in a topic, you're more inclined to be bloated, like how you explain things. Like for me, it's a tough task. When someone talks about how much they care about something, right? The person that visited just now cared about HP drain because they really thought it feels special to pass a map, since it's very hard to pass a map without dying, right? Like hard dying. So I have to understand that. And I know how that feels, or I understand the concept of that. And then now I have to like bridge that gap, right? I have to bridge the gaps. Like, okay, I just wanted to let you know that what I'm about to say has very little considerations for the feeling involved in passing a map with high HP drain. In fact, the maps that I play, their HP is borked. Like the system currently doesn't really adapt to not like graveyard maps and stuff. So what happens is I always have a preset, and the only preset for this is just the no fail, because I have to have no fail on. I can't complete the regiment if it just keeps failing, right? That's my only experience with HP drain. And it's not even pragmatic to the thing I'm doing. So the first thing I have to tell them is like, as long as you know that the performance rating system that you're talking about caters to someone that's not including you, and you find different ways to enjoy it, like using the difficulty adjustments, and then creating maximum HP drain for every map you play, that's the bells and whistles. What is this feature? It's a bloated feature set. Like even for my sub, I could use this to normalize all the AR of all my maps, and I still don't use it, right? I start with, I like to say I always like to stay new. My goal in my content, I guess I'm gonna say my content, I'm getting a better like over these days I'm getting a better vision of what my content is. I always want to be new. I want to be as new as I can be. So when I talk to other people who are very established in the way they think about things, it will keep me still understanding how they feel, because I build upon that outside of content, and then the content that I make deals with constantly helping other individuals who are very seasoned in their perspective to possibly just understand, not feel the same way, but just to understand some of the things that they don't spend a lot of time thinking about in a non-offensive way. Because I can always, in my opinion, empathize since I built life skills. Life skills is the fundamentals of why Twitch viewers watch a streamer they trust, and Twitch viewers typically watch just the things they're interested in. In fact, most of the internet only watch things that they're interested in. So I can never divorce myself from that. However, how can I make content about the thing that makes me who I am that most people don't see, which is always doing something new? So instead of going straight to difficulty adjustments and adjust the maps to allow me to master something that I've already worked on for a really long time, I did the exact opposite. I literally changed my fingers. Like, it's the most exciting thing. Like, I love doing these training sequences because I'm not using my middle finger anymore. Oh, and this stuff is even more exciting now because Sun, right, voluntarily offered another map set, like 2 different map sets. And the first thing I did was add more songs because the songs are different. So if there's anything that I want to impart on you, sometimes you might end up loving things that you didn't otherwise feel standardized. And I hope that's kind of true sometimes. If you're in a position where it always feels like things aren't good enough, or maybe like you're settling, like, you know, it could be better, or like it's pretty there, and you're talking about things that you spend 60 to 70% of your time enjoying, make it 100, you know? A switch of mindset can boost how much you love about things. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a niche community that has a lot of problems with HP drain and stable HD. Yeah. It's getting changed in laser. It is sort of. It's more a global thing. So Peppy talked quite a few times about trying to make things, trying to balance increasing the leniency of certain things while still capturing the resolution necessary to know, like, this is a tough thing. Like, he's trying, one of the focus is to capture when someone does something very hard, right? Because that's a necessary feeling for established OS player. Like, I want to feel like this is hard, and I want people to know this is hard. While at the same time, in general, a lot of the scoring adjustments and little changes is to make the game more approachable. So there has been a lot of designs, which I don't know if it's specific to the HP drain there, because I don't play HRDT and I don't have the time to follow that yet. I would say it's probably a thing that is getting changed, if it was a thing before. I know the one thing that relates to me specifically is leniency on sliders, and not so the timing. So slider heads now are going to have timing. However, the follow point following the sliders has become more lenient. This is a very, very stripped down way of explaining it. It's far more complicated than that, and obviously you probably know that as someone who plays a lot of OS. But generally speaking, there's going to be slider head timing, which I noticed it very prominently when I was like sampling songs, right? I'm curating songs for a future segment in OS, and it's pretty clear that I adapted a behavior that allowed me to play sliders a different way in OS stable, and it's not sufficient anymore. So I have to retrain that in OS laser. However, following the sliders is now alleviating something that I had to pay attention to more in O stable, and now maybe a little bit less so in O laser. So it's a change. There's a lot of give and take. That's the only feature that I actually know that fundamentally changed the gameplay, that deals with like scoring and whatnot. I don't know about the HP thing, so since after like 4,000 hours, I still really haven't played many mods, let alone double modding. Just thought. I'm sure I'll read it somewhere. I'll probably follow up on what you're saying at some point. I usually just follow his interviews a lot of times, or people who have the opportunity to interview Peppy. Obviously, if I were to interview Peppy, it would be not even 90% of my questions probably don't even really like directly involve the gameplay itself. I'm more curious about Peppy the designer, like Peppy the coder, the person who is making a game in a industry that is booming like crazy. How does he come up with these design choices and negotiate all these directions in an incredibly, arguably one of the most competitive industries right now, while having a game, in my opinion, that's almost untouchable at this point. And Os Laser makes it even more untouchable, and that's awesome, because now I can also recommend it. Like, without a doubt, it's not a reflection of the quality of the product, it's how approachable it is. And for the longest time of playing Os up to this launch, I'm like a hype generator right now for Os Laser, right? The idea is, the bottom line is, it was very hard to recommend Os stable. It's just very difficult. If you're a person who's like me, who's focused on what is the new experience, what's the learning process, what is structured around to approaching skill building, Os is like way at the bottom of the barrel. Like, it is so unapproachable that that's what limits its exposure. It limits the people you interact with. It limits ways and inspirations for Os. For example, if you belong to the Os community, there are going to be very specific ways you handle and deal with things, like critical thinking, life skills. Anything that's attached to that community is compartmentalized, and then within this community there are sub-communities, like you're saying, the HRDT community. Soon, when Os Laser comes out, there will be even more sub-communities of Os, because Os's community is going to expand, right? And it's going to create even more sub-communities, and those things are very important to be aware of, especially when it comes to learning and being approachable. When you get stuck in a community, desirably stuck, like intentionally want to stay in your community, and you're not growing as a community, right? You start losing new ideas. So if you're someone who's perfectly happy and you're in that community, it's great. If you are slowly declining in that community, it requires you to leave the community temporarily in order to find the solution, not to stay in the community. That's where the developer has an advantage. The developer often has to, whether they like it or not, they are often forced to pay attention to everyone around them. So to me, Os Laser, I would be scared if right now, right before the eve of Os Laser, right on the eve of Os Laser launch, that almost all the veteran gamers, all the veteran OS players are saying, yeah, you know, it feels the same. It's like OS stable. Like, it feels the same. Then, to me, OS laser is dead. Like, what I mean by that is, it will just... Peppy would have spent so many years only to create the same product again. And that would scream to me that their community was so strong and strong-arming Peppy that he gave up trying to change OS, trying to reach for new things, create more things into OS. So when a product is launched and you hear, you know, lots of critiques and feedback and stuff, which is like Peppy's catchphrase, is like, oh, hey guys, we're releasing a new fix. We're going to play it by ear. We're constantly adjusting, right? So I'm going to introduce another change and give me some feedback. Constantly give me feedback. That is the element of a developing person's, like a great person who understands that they're always constantly taking ideas. And because you know that person is constantly taking ideas, they are also being aware of everything outside. Why is that important? When you are a person who's consuming something, you are operating under the system of someone who's in control of that system. To me, I trust a developer who understands that they have a responsibility to constantly incorporate a bigger picture than the people they're catering to. When a community stagnates, it becomes intolerable and also restricts the creative freedom of the developer. It's often a lose-lose situation where the game is going to stagnate, the community is going to stagnate, and they will become more and more resistant to helping the game evolve and change. And if the developer is not doing that already and constantly rehashing the same system, then the system can't possibly change, which affects all the community, and the community will become used to it. And to me, for the longest time, the OS community has grown, included thanks to some creative content creators who are, you know, attracting other different types of OS players to create like different communities. However, this is the big deal. This is the big time. If you're an OS content creator, if you're someone who's really in love with OS, the thing you want for OS Laser is when you start it up, almost everything feels different. But the most important things to you feel similar. Not the same, similar. And mostly everything else feels different. What that tells you is that the developer you trust, the person who's designing your systems that are making you feel certain ways, is open-minded enough to inherently make you a more dynamic person. The reason why this is important, and I'm using OS and Peppy as an example, is because we're doing OS, right? We're playing OS. The idea is that this is what YouTube is doing. It's what Facebook is doing. It's what TikTok is doing. Only the concern right now is there's a concern that Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube might not necessarily be doing it in a manner that is sustainable. So who's responsible? Well, generally, the person who has the most privilege, the entity that has the most privilege of the system, is the first to get the responsibility hammer hit, right? Because now what do you have to do? Well, you know, TikTok has to make sure that their content doesn't mislead children to doing things that might be dangerous or misunderstood. YouTube has to moderate for misinformation, right? Facebook has to make sure that the addictive quality doesn't interfere with the daily functions of younger people. So in this way, it's not that far from that. And to me, it's the most exciting part of OS. Like, I don't pass the whole like OSU World Cup. I know this is gonna be a minor opinion because I'm not attached to OS in the same way, but I watch OS World Cup. I watch like tournaments here and there. I even have personal friends that are incredibly life defined by this game. And the most exciting thing I can see personally is that if I had an interview with Peppy, right, the first thing I would say is, thank you for staying true to yourself and being a creator. Because when a creator stagnates, the product that they make that almost defines a generation of people, they stagnate too. And whether Peppy is intentionally or unintentionally doing it, he has the mind, this Peppy & Co. has the mind and the building philosophy to constantly look and aspire for new things. What does that not look like when you don't have a developer or someone that's like that? You get the same game like 17 times in a row. And when I say 17 times, I'm thinking of a very specific series. If you ever play a Dynasty Warrior series, the Musuo series, you'll know what I mean. And no, they're not unpopular and don't make a lot of money. They make a lot of money. That's why they keep iterating on that formula. Peppy is gonna have OS Laser is going to have some controversy or like some it's not the best, it's not quite what I want, and I absolutely love that. To me, as someone who deals with people or feel like I need to help people who are stuck in a routine that might not necessarily be very like uplifting, like they're like either cruising or declining, this is it. This is what it looks like in game form. If your life feels like it's OS and you're now having to contend with the idea of moving to OS Laser, and if you literally move to OS Laser today and say, I dig it, then I am more likely to believe that you're a healthy person and have all the tools to be incredibly healthy, as in both mind, body, and spirit. If you're someone who says, man, I just want to stick to OS stable, like why do they have to like force this on everyone, then I'm very worried about you. Like, I would be very concerned for someone who feels that way. And if you ask them that they played OS like pretty much their entire life, then I'm super worried because they have no adaptability at all. So that's kind of like a deep cut, and I wanted to make it a deep cut because I'm already way in too deep on this discussion. Actually, yeah, it's well over an hour. So we'll cut this and talk about the change and all that. It really leads back to the beginning when the person asked me, Speedrun basically just asked me, so how do you like OS Laser? And I didn't know where to go from there. And then eventually it went into the whole, the person was really nice to reveal what was important to them indirectly, right? And then I was doing a very quick analysis of it and then shared a little bit of my thoughts about it. And it led to this discussion. Because OS Laser, to me, is the biggest thing that's happened to OS. Usually, when it comes to legacy games, the biggest and most controversial, it's big because it's controversial, is when it reaches the next iteration. And I was personally, 3 or 4 years ago, OS Laser was still a talk because I like to follow development. And I was really worried Honestly, I was worried for the very reason other people aren't worried about. And that's the idea that Peppy was just going to have a quality life update to OS stable. And you know what's funny about that? If you're talking about 3 to 4 years ago, the same people who want it to feel the same and it has to feel the same are also the people who say, OS laser, it's just OS stable, but with like more problems, right? And that is, to me, is a developer's worst nightmare. The moment you hear the people you cater to, like taking feedback and stuff, saying, oh, well, it's about the same, so I'm just gonna stick to the previous version. That's a reflection of yourself as a developer. Like, you start thinking, wait, am I really making the same game again? Like, nothing has changed? If a developer takes a risk and it becomes worse, that's a place to improve. If it gets better, then you have improved. So that's not stagnation. Trying and getting worse and trying and getting better, that's not stagnation. That's trying things. So 3 years ago, I would say even 4 years ago, when I started, maybe a year in, and I was looking at, oh, maybe OS is going to have a new version sometime. The comment that I hear most of the time is like, oh yeah, as long as it's exactly the same as stable, I'm fine. And then followed up by the same comments on, oh, I won't use OS laser because it does everything. OS stable does everything OS laser does. And that's why do I need to change if this still works, right? That's when I started thinking to myself, OS is going to slowly die out. It's gonna decline over the years. Because like you have to get really lucky that your product that stayed the same suddenly gets an uptrend. It does happen. Like, for example, fantasy right now. All the people from D&D and Lord of the Rings and stuff suddenly get a boon because the stars aligned and it went up. It's not that fantasy changed dramatically. It didn't. It only changed after it went uptrend. When it became an uptrend, they start designing new things to bring more people in. Peppy did the same. Peppy made OS laser. Peppy and his colleagues made OS laser into something that isn't just the same product that everyone wants. Right? Everyone as in the legacy community. And even after playing 4 years, this is probably the most exciting thing to me. Because I like being refreshed. I love being new. So, what is my goal most of the time? Get used to the new things. How fast can I get used to the new things? How fast can I appreciate the new things or learn from the new things? I'm not trying to diminish all the efforts and all the stuff that I use in OS stable. They're always going to be with me. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be with me. Like the skills and whatnot and the knowledge, right? Now I'm just interested in acquiring new things. Instead of spending another 6 hours every single day repeating and getting using the same UI, now I get to do new things. Even the song select is refreshing. I've already encountered resistance for myself, like for example the double sorting that I talked about yesterday. It's a change, and now I am doing it this way because you can't do it the other way back in OS stable, and that's just problem solving. It's just learning curve problem solving, and that's the mastery skill that I would say I can offer a masterclass in. I hope you end up liking OS laser worm, because it's really good in my opinion. I like the idea that you found something from that isn't there, and you're willing to say, it's either going to be okay or you're going to get used to it. Because that to me means that you're someone who is dynamically changing their conditions, as opposed to someone you might be able to hear. It's like, you know what? I don't care. OS Laser is going to launch. OS Stable is just going to still be developed in parallel, right? So I'll just stick to OS Stable. That I can be a little bit more concerned about. Because it's someone who stagnates deliberately. And stagnation is only great until it's not sustainable. So if you stagnate and you stay happy until you die, you know, like, for your mortal life, then all the power to you. What the people I talk to and the people I want to get to know all the time are those people who know how to express themselves, know that things change, know how to deal with them if they so choose, or know how to take advantage of them. And the whole fading thing, the circle fading thing, I'm curious, actually. I'm really curious. I'm gonna look it up and see what that's about. The hidden thing fading. I know that Sun tried the hidden mod briefly when we were talking in private. I'm not sure if it was like super apparent to him because it was just the one circle. I'm kind of curious if it was intended or not. Anyways, long digression. We're still gonna continue warming up where we left off. It's always worth talking about stuff. And it's even... Oh, wait. It's even more worth talking about things that people care about. I always, you know, to me, 90% of the time, I care if someone's sharing, so I'll have something to say. Right.